Welcome back, everyone, to Fintech Mavericks. I'm Nicole Casperson.
And I'm Drew Glover.
Today, we're joined by one of the most well-known voices in fintech, Simon Taylor, head of content and strategy at Sardine. Now, before Sardine, Simon co-founded 11FS, led blockchain R&D at Barclays, and became a go-to advisor for regulators, global banks, and governments. He's also the voice behind some of fintech's most listened to shows, Fintech Insider and Blockchain Insider, as well as the writer behind the loved industry newsletter, Fintech Brainfood. Simon, welcome to Fintech Mavericks. We're so excited to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun riding your coattails. You were a pioneer, and all of us in the creator class are glad that you ran out there and made this a job title. So we appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you are welcome. Yeah, I remember when I first launched Fintech is Femme, and some of my old colleagues on the journalist reporter side, I told them what I was doing and they were like, that's a job? Like, you can do that? So, and I was like, I'm making it one. And that's, hey, you're right. But
no, you really did. And now there's like a whole bunch of us like trying to do copycat thing. And that seems to be the word of the day. But I'm loving it. It's so much fun to actually say what you really think and have people still want to work with you. And it kind of inverts from like the day job where you're sort of not allowed to do that to now that is your day job and that's what people want more of.
Right.
Crazy.
Right. It is. And, I kudos right back to you, Andrew. I think of it like this. It is crazy to spend multiple times in my week, or basically my whole job is to be profound multiple times a week publicly, profound. What? And the only way to do that is like to be tethered to the internet. and then no one's ever going to, you're never going to make everyone happy. Right. So like, you just have
the haters are a real thing. Yeah. And the grind is there. So I see the work. I respect the work you guys do. Believe me, it's unbelievably hard to do it and to be like hyper online and then to make sense of it. And then the second you get something microscopically wrong, that one person on the internet, although I like to say though, being wrong on the internet is the fastest way to learn because they will find you. And actually, turns out to be a really useful forcing function to get better. So I'm happy to humble myself on a regular basis.
Well, because I saw your recent post about like, there really aren't days that we are like, I don't want to do this anymore, but you've recently had one of those days. And trust me, Simon, I've definitely been there. I'm not on Twitter anymore for that reason. Like it just helped to remove one of those elements. But yeah, I don't know. I think, I think to be more transparent about the grind and how hard what we do is important. But then on the other side, every time I have someone like those haters that are like nitpicking every little thing I do, I'm like, well, why don't you try writing a newsletter every Tuesday and Thursday for the rest of your life? You give it a go to 50,000 and press send every time, like just Madison Square Garden, like it's all fine. You live with that pressure and see if you bat 1,000 every time. So anyway.
Yeah. And then all the mistakes as soon as you've hit send. I feel you. I respect it. But But anyways, it's nice to be among friends.
Yes, it is. It is. So I want to get to know a little bit more about you, Simon. You've lived a few fintech lives, if you will. Definitely a lot more than I have. So
Same.
From bank exec to co-founder to strategist, what moment made you realize that you wanted to build rather than stay on the inside of legacy finance?
When somebody at, I'll just say it, McKinsey, came up with the idea of taking the budget we had to do some really cool stuff and putting it somewhere else in the organization, it was just a really crappy day. And then the next phone call I got was from the CEO of 11FS, who said, like there are challenger banks. Have you heard of those? I was like, yeah, neobanks, challenger banks, that's that sort of thing. It's like, what about that for consulting? It's like, yes, I want that. I want to go do that. And he said, what if instead of, sort of just having lots of people, they had a media brand at the front and on the back, they were more of a boutique advisory consulting sort of firm. And that's what 11FS is and does, and kind of did some incredible work, working with HSBC and NatWest and Stripe and Grab, and traveled the world with it. It was an incredible ride. But I think it was that shift of like, you can be kind of this guy inside of a large bank, and you'll get so far and you'll learn a lot. And my God, the people at Barclays when I worked there were so good to me. We got a lot done. We did some incredible things. But you are ultimately your job title and your rank. And that is systemic. It is not something that is any individual's malice. It is something that arises from within the kind of human system and the game within it. And it is just very hard to get anything done. So I respect people that are doing that and that are fighting the good fight. But as soon as you step out of that and you're like the advisor, people are like, wow, person from outside the company said a thing. This must be true. And I was like, okay, this is better. Yeah, let me stay here for a little while. That was kind of the insight.
Did that happen to you, Drew?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, to kind of just pile on to Simon, what you're saying, right, is I was an insider forever, and I kept realizing that I just couldn't keep amplifying other people's dreams over my own, number one. But number two is I am never someone that can just work on one thing. Like, that is something that I fought personally for so many years of what is this feeling that I feel that it feels icky. And I just started realizing the second I got out, and to your point, Simon, became that advisor, and I realized that I could curate my own day and like the projects that I worked on, that's when I really felt empowered. But it took me a lot longer to start building my own voice, like my own public voice. And I'm curious, Simon, on your end, like, during that journey, where was it where you said, hey, I'm actually going to start developing this unique voice in the space? And when did you, just to pile on to that, when did you start using that voice to build your business around it?
I think it sort of happened gradually, right? Like, I remember working for the payments company that I worked for before the bank. And, I walked into a meeting room with a bunch of execs, and they said something that I happened to agree with. And I went, word, just throw it out there. Like, that was my response. And because I'm naturally, this is who I am. Like, I'm just this guy in a business context. I always have been, even when I was wearing a suit in 2010. And it just didn't fit. And I got told off for it and pulled aside for it. And then there have been multiple examples throughout my career where I was told off and pulled aside for things. Another one was, I pushed really hard to build APIs when I was inside of one organization many, many years ago. And it would have, looking back on it, potentially done really well, but I got told off for pushing so hard for it. And I got disciplined, and I got a written notice for doing that thing. And that just kind of created this fuel, and it needed an outlet. And I've never been one to take the career risk, especially early on. I've always been risk averse, where I just go all the way and get fired. So I was like, I'm going to just hold on to my job, and I'm going to blog instead.
Loves to see things through.
Yeah. And it turns out that, like, some other external people that I used to really look up to, still do, like the Dave Birch, Chris Skinners of the world, the Brett Kings, all of those that came before, the Ron Shevlins, they actually liked what I had to say. And they sort of made space for me. And I was the exorbitant privilege of having people look out for you early on was massive. So then there was this like hope with the frustration. So that's sort of when I started to find the voice, when I still had the day job. But then when we kicked off 11FS, it was like, right, this is it. Like, this is us. We're building our own company. We're only going to stand out if we are who we are. And I've always been a goof, and just kind of let the world see it in podcast form, and found that line where, I can switch off the goof when I'm dealing with like senior regulator who needs the more proper version of me, and kind of go into the depth. but it's generally that fuels the weekly rant. It's why I call it a weekly rant, is because I'm like, it could be so much better if we just did this thing. So I don't know if any of that resonates with you, Drew, but like that was kind of my story.
Yeah,
it totally does. And I think it's, I always talk about it with founders on at Fiat Ventures, the VC fund, but like there's something we don't have control over. And there is this wave that is, that we don't have control over, that's either in our favor or against us. But I feel like as it pertains to creators, there's been this like wave that's continued to build over the last decade here, and I feel like we're getting closer and closer. Hopefully there's no crescendo and it just continues to build, but I feel like it just keeps getting stronger, and it's giving folks like us power right now. And so I'm curious, that power, how are you kind of harnessing it? How are you taking advantage of it in this moment?
I don't know that I am. I mean, launching Fintech NerdCon is I guess one piece of that, right? But the other one is trying to pour attention on Sardine, because the reason I joined Sardine, not just a great company, and I think they're going to do really, really well. My dad got scammed out of quite a bit of money. And I promise you, the very next conversation I had was with the CEO of Sardine, Soups, who showed me precisely how he would have detected that type of scam. And I'm like, well, I've got this privilege of being able to pour attention onto things, and I really want to pour it onto this because I think it actually might make people's lives a whole lot better, and I want to work around these people, because so much of it is that sniff test of like, who do you want to be around, and like who could you see like yourself working with, and could you have hard conversations with, and like the honesty and the transparency. Like, find me a person who has a bad word to say about Soups and I'll show you a bad person. Like he's like a Rorschach test for humanity. It's amazing. So there's being around great people. The company was obviously going to go do well. It had a sense of mission to it. And there was like a huge upside in terms of learning. So a lot of folks now, it has functioned for Sardine, heard about the company because I joined them, or they've heard of Fintech Brainfood and then they wonder what Sardine is. So like that does really, I think, show a new model for how creators can bring, B2B creators can bring value to specific brands. So that's one route. But then with the creator side, I always try and keep Brainfood as neutral as I possibly can. But then also podcasts and media and events, and just dipping on my toe into those waters really, and flexing those muscles. What I've tried to avoid is using Brainfood as like a way to do ads, and that's simply because I just don't have the capacity to create net new content and deep dives. Like I've got a day job, I've got stuff to do, but B, because I think there's so much more we could build with the magnet for attention if you can maintain that authenticity that you guys have achieved and that some of us have achieved. If we can maintain that authenticity and that audience trust, we can do other things that are adjacent to events, like community, like product, like events, but what else? And I think that what else question is the one that is going to be the really interesting model for the next 3 to 5 years. The B2B creator will probably be bigger than the consumer creator when all of this is said and done.
Oof, well said. I agree. I mean, here I am. Obviously, no, but
you would.
I would. I'm biased in every regard. There's a couple of things. I mean, one, I think it's really cool the way you've been able to strike the balance, because I've oftentimes seen, a lot of times creators, they quit the 9 to 5 because their employer is not cool with them having a strong personal brand. They think it takes away from them working at the company, which I would argue is the total opposite. It actually enhances the company's credibility. It enhances the personal brand of one of your employers. So to me, it's that win-win. And I think if we can strike more of that balance in this space, then a lot of fintech companies can actually really benefit from having versions of us, whether employed full-time 9 to 5, or if you work with us on a case-by-case basis, like some fintech companies work with me. But to your point, the creatorpreneur, which is the new word for it, in the D2C space is kind of, I think it's kind of crossing over into not being as authentic. And that is something that will not fly in B2B. So I guess my question then for you would be, you are one of the most trusted storytellers in fintech. When you're crafting the content, how do you balance being strategic with being real? What are the things that you think make a story stick with people? Curious, as a storyteller myself, what your secret sauces are. Maybe they align a bit with mine.
Maybe. I want to ask you the same question, actually. To answer for myself, I'm just being as honest and as raw as I can be. Yep. And I'm obviously colored by my incentives and my biases. I try to call them out where I can, yep. But I'm trying not to hide them. I think I put in my disclaimers that, like, I'm presenting my findings, but don't pretend this is research done by a major firm with a team of 12.
Yes.
Please do not do that. And if you're taking what I say as gospel, then go search, just like you would with an LLM. Like, please don't take this as gospel. Take it as a pointer in the right direction and the hypothesis. And I think a lot of people like my takes, whether they agree with them or not. It's useful to have a take out there and an opinion out there. I get that feedback a lot. So I'm just trying to be as honest as I can be. And I've realized that I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind being wrong in public.
Yep.
Like, generally, the upside is somebody comes along and is 99% of the time extremely constructive about disagreeing with you agreeably. And I think if we can do that, that's a great space for conversation to happen. And it doesn't get enough credit for how much that does happen. And then how much serendipity comes out of the back of it, of, like, you end up meeting somebody who showed you how that really works. And then you know that person, which is kind of amazing. So I generally write as I think. It's like a stream of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And then I'm editing it back through a couple of lenses, like fintech operators, person who works in banks, person that might be at a regulator, VC. Like, what are the type of different aspects of it? And then does this make sense? And then just kind of edit it and refine it a little bit. But you know, if you look at the early rants and you look at them now, it's really all starts in that same place, which is a core idea. And then just me wanting to kind of understand things by hammering them out for myself. And what you're seeing is my inner thinking, my inner workings out, but just broadcast ultimately.
Yeah. And I think people really like that, actually. I've learned that, you know, authenticity has been such the creator buzzword or leadership buzzword of the last couple of years, I guess, especially in social. I would argue we're really transitioning into relatability. So people being way more drawn to someone who's honest, open. Like, if I'm sick and I'm still writing my newsletter, I'm telling you I'm sick and I'm writing my newsletter. So Godspeed if I have a mistake in there. I just threw up a minute ago. Sorry, right? Like, I have food poisoning and no one else writes this newsletter but me. You know, it's just that honesty and that rawness. You know, you've really seen fintech evolve in real time. So I'm curious about, you know, looking back at the industry maybe 10 years ago versus today. What is maybe that correlation with the trends in fintech that have evolved in the last 10 years and the need for this more relatable, creator-centric storytelling that has now made us all start to create, like, we all three of us on this call have all of our own summits coming out this year. Like, what is that correlation? I was kind of there 10 years ago. I started my career 10 years ago. So, but what is that about?
I don't know. Again, there were those that came before. There was Ron Shevlin, Brett King, Jim Maroos, mostly dudes. But you know, if I was to call out Duana Blomstrom, Leda Glyptis, you know, there's been a bunch of folks that have been in this game. And I would say that in the sort of 2009, 2010, 2011, I was in a day job watching what they were doing, and they were sort of some of the early creators. So some of it was there were people trying this for a while. Some of it is we had a generation of people from tech come into what was traditionally a stuffy finance industry and try and shake it up. And because you had this influx of people that didn't understand the industry, they were looking for an accessible way into it, and they found the creators. And I'm sure you both get this quite a lot. People tell me, "Oh yeah, no, when we bring on new hires, we make sure that they subscribe to your newsletter. We make sure they check out these pieces that you've done." And I think it's about making it accessible. Like, there's a lot of textbooks on financial services, but there's nobody that keeps you somewhat current, that kind of puts things in context, that makes sense of them, that tries to give you frameworks. So I think it's a combination of those things that, like, the aperture was opened a little bit. You had this influx of talent, and then they started passing it around themselves because they were trying to make sense of an industry that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree on access. And I'll just also say, I am deep in fintech, but I also grew up with like a ton of learning disabilities. Like I grew up like really, really bad at school. And the thing that made me understand fintech was use cases and edge cases of like real life examples being explained to me in a really thoughtful way. And through my entire journey of fintech, that's what I've always looked for as I'm trying to understand it. And to your point, Simon, like Nicole as well, I could never find that in any of the traditional fintech outlets, that be a bank, if that be anything else. It took a voice like Simon and Nicole and many other people to kind of trailblaze through it to make sense of a world that we engage with on a daily basis in a million different ways, to understand these like nuances of like what matters. And like, even when I speak about fintech, I'm constantly, if I'm on a podcast, I'm saying, when you explain, before in the prep call, I'm like, when you explain your business, I need you to give me 2 or 3 different use cases and edge cases that like an end user understands. I'm constantly trying to do that as well. But access to me is so important, because the people that need to learn about fintech are the ones that are the most underserved in this world. And if they don't have real life examples, if they didn't have the right type of schooling, they're just not going to be able to connect on a level that, someone that, went to some Ivy League school was able to connect with.
It's a fun fact. I left school at 16. I got an apprenticeship in software engineering.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
And that doesn't strike me as remarkable. But in the US context, it is. In the UK context, maybe a little bit less. And I was in telco. I wasn't in payments at all. I was out of work for about 12 months. So I had testicular cancer when I was 23, and I took a voluntary severance, which was a year's salary. I was able to recover really quickly. We have a national healthcare system in the UK as well, so I didn't come out of it with too much debt. But then, 23 and lost, oh my God. And I had to get a job. And the job I got happened to be working at a payments company. And the guys I was working with at the time were all ex-military. And they knew that I talked my way into the job. I've always had a little bit of gift of gab. And they saw right through me. But I didn't know that they were hazing me to try and get me to come clean. I just thought they were being really mean. So what I would do is go hide in the bathroom and scroll on my BlackBerry and read about technology, because I've always been a tech nerd. I mean, look, I am just a tech nerd. And one of the things I see is a TechCrunch article about Jack Dorsey launching a nutty new startup called Squirrel. And I email that to the bosses, because at this point I'm having such a bad day, I actually don't mind if I get fired. And instead of firing me, a guy called John Goodale comes to see me and says, Simon, I've been thinking about building like a product department, and I'd really like you to lead it. And I was like, what? And so he'd been just like looking, he was, head of sales for Europe. He was looking to do something along those lines. And there are these little moments in life where somebody makes a bet on you. And I am eternally grateful to John and many others who've given me a hand up along the way, to kind of create those opportunities. Because, like a kid from the north of England that left school at 16, I did okay up to that point, but I was lost, and some guy came and went like, "We're just going to change your life overnight. Like you now do this, and you got to create new products, and you got to be innovative and make things." And I was like, "Wow, that was an unlock."
Wow, I think you can
Huge.
gather those people too throughout your career. I've been really lucky. So from a journalist perspective, and kind of back to the point of like making fintech content culturally relevant. For me, behind the scenes, what would happen is I would interview all these amazing founders and all these amazing leaders in fintech. I would present more of this like human centric story to my editors. And they'd be like, "That's really cute, Nicole. This isn't what we care about. Like, I just want numbers. I just want." And I'm like, "Okay, but I'm telling you, people want this." But it just wasn't, that's not what a trade publication does. And that I understood. So I was like, "All right, fine, but I'm telling you, you're missing the mark." Like, and I tried. And of course I'm like always the youngest person in the room. So they're really not listening to me. And I'm like, "You should really listen to me because I'm the internet and social and TikTok and it's happening." And they're like, "No, you're so silly." Anywho, they were all wrong. And they should have listened to me. But that's like what sparked me going off on my own, is like, okay, well then I guess I should just go make this somewhere else, where if you're not going to. And the big thing I think that's great about what us creators in fintech do is we take those human stories, we put them at the forefront, and we make fintech accessible, like what Drew said. And when you start to tell these human elements of how, you met someone in your career and they changed your life, or there's a real use case here to help with healthcare or climate change or student debt or this, you start to actually put these applications into people's real lives. Now people understand fintech, and now fintech has this level of cultural relevance that is hard for like stodgy brands to address or come across. So that I think is what is also has changed over, the last decade or so. And because we interview people, we do get to collect, right? Just these groups, these incredible people that end up wanting to be in your corner just because you were open to asking them questions about themselves, but also sharing about yourself, so that's how people have lifted me up along the way. It's just, I asked them how they're doing and that was like enough, so I don't know if that's how it's been for you since you've been interviewing. I stopped counting. I don't count how many people I've interviewed at this point in my life, but do you have a ballpark for how many podcasts you've done?
My estimate is somewhere in the 12 to 1300 region.
Okay.
Good number.
Just like
Fintech Insider, I mean, now they're over 1,000. When I left, we'd done about 700 of those, and I was the most frequent host. We had 300 plus blockchain insiders, and I was on pretty much every one of them. How many have I guested on over the years? I do. We now do the Tokenized podcast, which goes weekly. We're up over 50 episodes there. I do Rex and Simon Talk Fintech every week. Like Alex Johnson, I do monthly. That's, I mean, so it adds up. Done a few of these things, and every single one of them has been an excuse to learn. Like, this is a classic example. I've learned that Drew learns through use cases. I've learned how the world of reporting and trade press just wants numbers and will not deal with a human story. And that's what's holding them back in so many ways. Mm-hmm. And I will take those things and they will stay with me. Mm-hmm. And every single time you get an opportunity to have a conversation like this, you learn a little bit more and you grow a little bit more. Yep. And I think that's a privilege in its own right. So yeah, a fair few, but I always think it's a really efficient use of time. Mm-hmm. Because yes, there's some prep work and there's some organizing and there's some whatever else, but the velocity of learning per conversation is like phenomenal whenever you're in this sort of setup.
Ooh, I like that velocity of learning. It's true though. I agree.
I like that too. I love this conversation so far, by the way. I want to just quickly shift over to B2B marketing and how that has really changed in recent years. At Fiat Growth, all we do is turnkey marketing. And there's one thing from a B2B perspective that I see shift is the cost of B2B marketing has skyrocketed. And I think a big reason that, it's jumped over to the creator side, the content side, is because content doesn't cost that much anymore to create. However, perspectives of the people talking about that content is everything. And it's also become one of the best marketing arms, specifically for B2B. As Nicole said earlier, like creators within B2C is very transactional. Within B2B, it's become something a lot more special and a lot more effective. And Simon, I'm curious, specifically with Sardine, like, and even like the broader like B2B fintech and broader B2B space, how are you thinking about content and strategy and how to use that as a lead flow engine, a brand awareness engine, and beyond?
At Sardine, somewhere between 50 and 60% of all of our leads are inbound and not paid or not sourced from events or anything along those lines. And a lot of that, some of that's me, but the vast majority of that has been building up Soups and building up Ardi and making sure they're in the right conferences and making sure that we're hitting the right messages and that we're doing the right white papers and that we're meeting the right people. And frankly, I mean, Nicole, Drew, you can get invited to speak on a conference. When I get invited to speak on a conference, I'm Simon from Sardine getting invited to speak from a conference, and somebody will come and ask me what Sardine is. So that brand awareness is intentional. Building Soups into a brand has been intentional. He has always had a lot to say, but being a forcing function to say it on a daily basis, he was, there was a LinkedIn ranking of the top 100 people in fintech, and he was like 34 out of the top 100. Like from a standing start a couple of years ago, that's pretty good. Like he's a content creator in his own right. And look, we have a workflow where I'll come up with some ideas, he'll come up with some ideas, we'll refine them and whatever. But that's a really big part of what we do. And then you add to that the blogs, you're actively going outbound to use creators like yourself as a part of your go-to-market. And it really does start to become a different way of creating content. And then from a strategy standpoint, there's intentionally using the social channels, intentionally using blogs, intentionally using like new media, like podcasts as a big part of the go-to-market. But the other part is when you are doing classic things, when you are doing webinars, when you are doing white papers, when you are doing that stuff, make it operator depth. So I've got to give a shout out to Eduardo Lopez at Sardine. He was at Lithic before Sardine, and a lot of his principle is about building guides, building the thing that you can pick up and actually, I've just got a job in fraud prevention. What's my job? Here's an example. You could do this, and then this is how it works. And so just making this really accessible stuff on how to use the product, how to do your job. He talks about having operator depth level content is how you go from top of funnel. I've got your attention. You've heard of Simon. You've heard of Sardine. To middle of funnel. Here's how you do your job. Here's how you solve the problem. And wait, these Sardine guys, they keep popping up and they keep. So that's how I bring you down the funnel. And then you might see us at an event and you might have something, and you know who we are. There's already a familiarity there. So I think really thinking about it in that funnel term, always doing it with a bit of an approachability. Yes, you're a brand, but Soups will talk about his latest bike ride, the things his kid's done, and often that's his best performing stuff on social.
True.
You know, like that's the stuff that makes him the likable, relatable guy. He talks about he had like a real health scare about 18 months ago. It's one of his best ever performing posts. For a guy, that's like a data scientist and is in AML and fraud and compliance, I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that I love that you said is I feel like most brands use content, use social for top of funnel only, but they don't think about it as a middle or even bottom of funnel strategy. And I just, as you're chatting with everyone in your network, is that something unique that Sardine is doing that other brands aren't doing well? Or is that something that you're seeing a lot of other folks do? Because I typically see once it gets middle of funnel for B2B, it's like, cool, now this is a sales qualified lead and we're going to like turn this into some one-to-one conversation, but you're not continuing to use that one-to-many strategy of great. They're in the middle. Like, let's turn that marketing to sales qualified lead even to a stronger sales qualified lead. So when they do chat with that person, it's a no-brainer sale.
Yeah, look, I think in that middle, we're still trying to help you solve your problem, not buy our product. And if we can figure out how to solve your problem, then we know how our product can be an answer for it. So it's connecting those dots and just bringing you that bit closer. Because at the top of the funnel, there's hundreds of thousands of you. Like, there's so many of you. My LinkedIn this week will do 1.5 million impressions. Like, there's no way I'm going to bring all of those to the middle of the funnel. And even if I do, if I bring 10,000 down to the middle of the funnel, what do I do with all of those? I need a way to keep them warm and to have a conversation with them and for them to find something useful that they can do that solves a problem for them, where I'm giving value to them, but I'm giving value at scale. So we're about to launch the agentic oversight framework, which is a really annoying term for a white paper. But essentially, every banker's like, can I use AI? Will I ever be able to use AI? What if it hallucinates? And we're just like, here you go. Here's how you can actually use AI in a structured way that meets all of your BSA, AML sort of requirements and manages for hallucination risk. And I'm trying to give you something where it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how we do it at Sardine, but I'm not saying buy this product. There's no product in there. There's just, this is how to set it up. And I think that is classic from my perspective, middle of the funnel, in that, yes, there may be a lead who's seeing that's targeted, but I'm also going to push that out at the top of funnel. But it's really about that operator depth. Yeah. That's the red thread that runs through it. If Soups is doing a social post about, like, there's this new type of deep fake attack, he's also going to tell you some things that you can do to detect it and how you can mitigate it. It's tell me what and tell me what to do about it. Like, help me understand it. I think it's that second thing that differentiates you.
And I would even say that throughput is also access, right? Like, access to content that's not gated like it used to be, which I think is like one of like the best things that's ever happened from the content era. And so love what you're saying there. And I think that's super smart. Like, any listener out there that's running a B2B business should 100% be taking that as gospel in terms of a strategy they should at the very least be testing.
Yeah, I would just give value at every stage, and it will come back to you. I know we are out of time here, but I'm going to rapid fire our last couple questions to you. These are quick answers, Simon. So just whatever comes to mind first. Ready? So what advice would you give an early stage founder trying to build in fintech right now?
Great question. There's so much going on around AI. Just build and see what sticks. I think that's it. Revenue might not be sticky, but customer love and depth will be. A product market fit has a feel to it. So you'll know it when you see it. So keep building.
Love that. If you were starting over today, fresh into fintech in 2024, what would you do first? Is it AI?
Yeah, no. What would I do first? If I was starting today, I'd go attack it from the sides. I'd go. I still have an itch to scratch about putting McKinsey out of business. I think I'd.
Oh no!
That's like one of my theses and what we're trying to build it at Fiat. So you're speaking to me right now, Simon.
I didn't know. Should we have an elite? Like, do we need an allegiance, an Avengers like call for all the creators to take down McKinsey? Peace and love, I guess. All right. I didn't know this, guys. You have to keep me in the loop. Okay, so last question for you. you've been in rooms with regulators, startups, investors, and everyone in between. What's your hope for the next generation of fintech leaders?
I'm struggling for the words for this one, but I think it's that we can build towards better outcomes without the arguments along the way. Fintech seems like an incredibly adversarial space where it's like banks versus fintechs versus. And I don't know, competitive dynamics are useful. They bring the best out of the species sometimes. But we kind of have a similar set of North Stars here. So can we orient towards the outcomes we want to achieve and then compete on being better at those rather than like trying to tear the other one down? Like that always, if there's anything that takes the wind out of my sails, it's like trying to tear something down. And I say this as somebody who just made fun of McKinsey, actually got a lot of respect for them.
Same, for the record.
They do an incredible job.
Pioneers.
Don't get me wrong. It was just that one budget call, and I'll never let it go. But in all seriousness, I do think we can build better, and we're about to see an order of magnitude reduction in the cost it takes to get product to market. Whenever I reduce cost, I increase opportunity. And what is that going to do for the aperture of opportunity, and who's going to build that?
So well said. Simon Taylor, thank you so much for joining us on Fintech Mavericks. I know we've had many, what are these called? Golf claps? Many rounds of applauses on this episode, but thank you so much for joining. We're very aligned, by the way, in a lot of the ways that we create our content, the way we see B2B marketing and all the things. So we should add another podcast to your plate. Maybe once a month, Fintech Mavericks. We'll just add it to the... add it to the loop, increase that velocity of learning exponentially. So
I'm for it. Like I want to sit at the learning tree because you guys are the pioneers here. I'm just following in that slipstream, like I said. So I'm game whenever.
Amazing.
You tell me when, I'll be there.
Amazing. Thanks,
Love
guys.
it.
Woo!
Thanks, team.